Good morning, Elizabeth, and happy Monday. So today I'm very excited because we're doing our past life tell-all reading where we get to see places that you lived in, personality traits, and their meaning, right? So we're going to start very okay, this is where this took place. This is a approximate time. These are your ruling planets. This is the personality. And then we're bringing that indigenous touch to it where we get to see any part of the sacred land and how it worked with your energy. Right, we get to see the past, the present, the future, based on all that energy. That is my favorite part. It's a little touch that I added when I finished this, creating this reading years ago, with my elders. I was like, let's sprinkle a little more information on that. Right, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm so excited that you're excited. I always get really excited when people are like super excited. So let's start here. Here we have our spirit altar candle. We have our open divination candle. We have our beautiful black obsidian. We have our ammonite for that beautiful energy of primal energy. And of course, we have another one that's been calcified. That is actually really beautiful. So what we're going to do is we're going to be pulling out 6 cards, right? So we're going to be focusing on 6 cards, 6 lifetimes. So we're going to start with the personality traits. Right, we're going to start with the lesson. So you asked, what were the shadows? So shadows are our lesson, right? So the shadow of a life is our lesson. What do we have to learn? You know, did we learn that lesson or did it pass on to the next lifetime? A lot of times it shows us that, but it's almost kind of like all in one, right? So it kind of goes into storytelling mode, which is what I love. So I'm going to zoom you in a little bit. And we're going to go ahead, and what we're going to do is we're going to start with the main card, and then we're going to bring a card from the sacred sites, right? So we're going to just dive a little bit deeper with the energy of the land and the energy of that lifetime. So we're going to start with the first one, and as you can see, we have the beautiful Egyptian Buto goddess, right? So this took place in ancient Egypt. So we're talking about 3110 BC to 640 AD, right? So here we see your ruling planet is Pluto. And here, the rules of this lifetime was conception and dying, right? So there was this fascination with death and the spirit world. Now, your psychic abilities were pronounced, right? So the line between this world and the next was blurred for you. So what that means is we see a very active gift of mediumship here, right? And I don't like to label gifts because my elders always say gifts don't belong in a box, right? Everybody's frequency is different, but you had this amazing gift to really connect and communicate with the spirit world, with the world of the dead, right? So here, because of this actually caused you a lot of morbid fears when you were a child, because you started to realize these other people are not in the same place that I am, right? So you could see there was this fear that was there as a child. So you kind of felt safer when you were in seclusion, right? So you had this amazing ability to transform what was negative into something positive, right? So we see the energy alchemy there. Now your personality here and your character were extremely compelling, but because of your energy and how different it was, you did deal with a lot of gossip and a lot of envy throughout your life, especially as a grown-up. And that makes perfect sense. A lot of times we will see, to this day, you know, healers and people that are different, you will always catch their attention. You tend to be a mirror for other people, right? So what happens is that gossip and envy and that energy is pretty much always just part of our lives. It's something that we always have to deal with. But just as I say, never paying them mind, you know, just remembering that their opinions has nothing to do with us, right? So let's take a look deeper into this. We see the energy of Baalbek, right? So the focus of this lifetime was actually in indulgence, right? But there was a few moments that this could have also been the energy of Egypt, but it made some kind of travel happen to the Baalbek Valley in Lebanon, right? So here you were almost invited to sing, to dance, to drink, you know, to make love, right? Almost like it had a lot to do with the Bacchanalia festivals that happened in Bacchus, right? And he was the Roman god of wine and fertility. So what we see here is a lifetime of fertility a lifetime of really connecting with the divine energy, but it was extremely ancient, right? So here, we see you as a woman, right? But you had this tremendous ability to tap into not only your sacred femininity, but also your sacred masculinity, right? What we see here was a lifetime of a lot of ancient ritual, a lot of ancient festivals, right? And we see here just really working with the energy of Bacchus. Now, when we look for Bacchus, he was actually known as the party god, right? So you might think that he was honored anywhere you went, right? But without awareness of the sacred, there was no honoring of the divine, right? So he kind of reminded people, we can have festivals, we can celebrate, but the divine always has to be present, right? So basically what we see here is asking yourself, when was the last time that I truly celebrated myself? We see this great energy with you, right? And we see the energy of Egypt and Lebanon. So a lot of working with the divine energy, a lot of working with your energy, with the energy of spirit, right? So if we were to label this, we see the energy of a medium. Now, anytime that you see any type of gifts in a lifetime, it usually means that you still have that gift in this lifetime, right? So let's move on to the next one. What we see here is the energy of the Prairie Plains Medicine Wheel. Right, so this is somewhere around the American Midwest, extending into the Rocky Mountains, around 500 AD to the present moment. So to the last lifetime before this one, right? So here we see your ruling planets, Sun and Moon, right? And here we see the rules as individuality and visionary experiences. Now, take a look how different in this lifetime you were. Here we see you very shy, very reclusive, very independent. You had this power of selfhood that was felt most keenly while you were in seclusion. So we see 2 lifetimes that you felt very comfortable alone, right? So passion and courage were integral to your personality, and your earth was experienced as the mirror of the spiritual realm, right? Here we see you very sensitive, very tenderhearted, but very connected to the earth. Now, what's interesting about this is that we see the energy of a medicine man or a medicine woman. We see a lot of working with herbs, a lot of working with native ways, a lot of working with the 4 elements, specifically the wind, right? So let's take a look deeper and see if it takes us anywhere else, right? So what we're seeing with the next card is the energy of Tiwanaku. Now, Tiwanaku is actually a very, very sacred card, right? So it goes beautifully with the main lifetime, with the main card of the lifetime, right? So what we see here is the main energy, or the focus here, was eliminating anything, right? So we see these roots that you carried that came down all the way from Bolivia. All right, so this was probably when this whole entire state was connected, and we saw all the tribes in different places, right? So what we see here is in the past here, when the colonizing Europeans discovered the ruins of Tiwanaku, they were told by the indigenous Aymara Indians that they had been built by a race of white gods who had inhabited the land before the Inca came, right? So basically what happens here is almost kind of really standing your ground, right? We see a lot of power within you, and we see you as somebody who really took care of the underdog. So you were a defender. Here we see the energy of a male, and what we're seeing here is a young male who would go out to war, but also come back and really share sacred energy, sacred medicine, right? We do see you as a middle person, so it was almost like you were able to interact with other people when it came to communication, right? There was a lot of knowledge within you, and there was a lot of working with skulls. So I don't know if you've ever seen skulls and if you're attracted to them, or just based on what you feel, that will tell us a lot about this lifetime. But skulls back in those days, including with my native people, they would carve these skulls from jade, right? And it would represent, how many battles they went into, and things like that. So skulls, for some reason, keep showing up as something very powerful in this, right? So you had this amazing ability to communicate with the dead and with other dimensions, right? So see how we're still seeing that mediumship ability, but it's just a little bit different, right? That's why we don't label our abilities, because they're so so hard to just pinpoint, right? So this is actually really, really interesting. There was a lot of potential here, and it was almost like you were always constantly trying to reach the middle ground. Like you were not afraid of going to war, but it was almost like you were the middleman, right? You were always trying to bring peace. So we see the essence of that beautiful medicine man. Now the next one is a very long time ago. So we see the prehistoric sorcerer, right? So this is France and other parts of Paleolithic Europe around 13,000 to 11,000 BC, so a few weeks ago. Here we see your ruling planet is Pluto, right? So your rules here were the curiosity and the need to understand what was hidden. So here you were very mysterious, very spooky and wise. So we're talking about the very, very, very back in the day caveman kind of day, right? So you had this fascination with the dark side of things and things of an occult nature, right? Your mind was extremely rich and imaginative. You were very attracted to the unusual. You were very sympathetic, empathetic, and mature with this ability to teach others. See how we're like synchronizing a lot of medicine within, still the essence of a medicine woman, right? You were attracted to all of the unusual. It was like if it was something normal for those days, it didn't like call you at all. It didn't like, you know, make you feel like, ooh, but this, anything that was of occult nature, that was it for you. It was like your love. You love anything that was occult. You love anything that was different, right? So that we see this great wisdom that came from. So you did come down from a very important family of what we would call medicine people. But back in these days, we barely know any of the medicine that was practiced there. The only thing that we see now are the carvings, right? So let's take a look at here and go deeper. Now, it seems like this was somewhere in Alaska, right? Or it's like we see France, but we might see some relatives or ancestors from France, other Paleolithical countries, I cannot say that word, as well as Alaska, right? So here we see the focus was inclusion, right? So here it's almost like the energy that you had, it's almost like, have you ever been left out in the cold to fend for yourself, right? So basically you worked a lot with the goddess Sedna, and the goddess Sedna was this Inuit goddess of the sea, and she healed the scars that these experiences had left you, right? So Sedna Power's animal was the walrus. Just as this creature depends on a large herd of survival, which will unite to protect an individual under attack, you needed to find a new family of spiritual people who supported you at this time. Now you learned to not give your power to those who hurt you, right? You worked closely with the Inuit goddess Sedna as well as with the spirit animal of the walrus, and you kind of learned to become aware of your surroundings, to avoid being gullible, yet also not to be so cautious that you pushed away the people that could help you, right? So the Inukshuk symbol of here is signifying the Cairn people of the Arctic built as a landmark. So it confirms your change of direction in your approach to relationships, right? So basically, if you see this symbol in a dream, right, or in a vision, and I really want you to look at it, or perhaps something that looks similar in the natural or in the man-made world, it's almost like this is still the way that Sedna still communicates with you in this lifetime. So as you can see, we see that beautiful energy of this lifetime, but it's still very in tune with your lifetime today, and I think that is actually quite very beautiful. This is actually a card that's really rare to see, and I've done these readings for some decades, and I could tell you that when it's symbolism that's still present in your life, it's extremely rare to see, right? So let's move on to the next one. Here we see the Mayan jaguar priest, right? So this is somewhere in Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, and the Yucatan Peninsula. We're talking about 400 to 700 AD, and your ruling planet here was Uranus. So here you had the ability to understand abstract knowledge, right? So you were very artistic, very industrious. You had this pronounced interest in astrology and heavenly movements, and an unusual ability to understand abstract concepts. So your personality was actually friendly, but your body was rather delicate. Your mental powers were outstanding and extremely advanced, and your visions reach into the future. So what we see here is that of an energy of what we call today a seer. Now a seer is actually someone that's really rare. Actually, if you Google it, you will only see the seer definition for what they have in the Bible. It's almost like they kept very hush-hush. So a seer was someone who had the ability to see into the future. The beautiful thing that we see here is that this is why your body was delicate. Usually when you have mental powers that are outstanding like that, your energy and your mind and things like that, your physical health actually is extremely, how do you say, extremely, what is that word? Just almost like the person may have a lot of illness, right? Because most of their energy goes to that energetic place rather than a physical place, right? So we see maybe a lot of illness or a debilitating body, but it was basically because of how gifted you were, right? And this is something that we still see with very big medicine men, very big medicine women. So let's take a look deeper at our card of the energy. So we're going to take a look deeper at that sacred energy. So what we see here is the energy of extern stain, right? So when we see this is all the energy of really working with blossoming, right? This is the energy of working with our energy rather than the physical. Does that make sense? Right? So this is almost like liberation kind of from the heavy stuff and blossoming, right? So what we see here is there was a lot of times in this lifetime that you felt like you were drowning in murky waters and you needed to be rescued, right? So what we see here is we see like a tail of a huge sea snake, right? Known as the world serpent. So what this means is that you carried around a lot of people's burdens in this lifetime, right? So there's a lot of esoteric secret. So that puts you almost like a shaman, a true shaman of that tribe, right? So basically, the energy that you would receive was sometimes very baffling, and you did carry the weight of people that you did work with, so people that you helped heal. A shamanic journey was actually very important here, and doing soul retrievals as well. So now we kind of have a little more understanding of why your energy was so delicate. That's the word I was looking for, delicate, right? It's because a lot of your work consisted of helping souls and helping people heal. Now, let's take a look at the next one. Also with this lifetime, if you have a calling for astrology, or if it always just kind of called your attention, it probably does stem from here, right? So the next one, now we move on, we see the energy of the contemporary Western symbol. So this is actually an energy that's worldwide, right? Somewhere around the early 20th century or 19th century. So we see the Sun, the Mars, and Uranus as your ruling planets, right? So what we see here is someone who had a great imagination with certain creative skills stimulated by tension. So you did really, really good working under stress. Now there was a fine line between creativity and destruction, but your fascination with opposites, right? And your strong pulls in opposite direction really kept you with working with the occult. You resisted sameness of the mundane, and you actually thrived on obstacles and stress. You were known as a survival, and you felt purged by the resolution of conflicts. Now you could actually be pretty self-destructive because you loved conflict. You loved all of that, which could actually be destructive, right? But you consider conflict more attractive than boredom, right? So there was a lot of rocky relationships, a lot of taste though. And you were very creative and very talented, but you lacked focus, right? So what we see here was that you did not have the patience to deal with the same thing over and over again. And I honestly don't see that as a negative thing. I always see that as such a beautiful thing, because it was almost like you didn't hold on to something unless it spoke to you. You know, it wasn't that you just would give up. It was just like, if there's no connection there, you didn't really find a reason to stay there, right? And that went with everything, with situations, with people, and things like that, right? So what we're seeing here was a very independent lifetime. In this lifetime, you like to be loud. You like to just be around people. You did well. So we don't see seclusion here. We see that energy of a leader, but a lot of sarcasm, a lot of cynicism, right? So in this lifetime, you were either loved for who you were, or people couldn't stand you. There was no middle ground, right? So what we see here is the energy of resurrection. So obviously the energy of death and rebirth, a lot of changes in this life. Now we see it could have been somewhere in the province in Turkey, right? So basically, was a lifetime that it was a lot of intrigue but a lot of fear, right? So you kind of created a hard shell around you, right? And anytime that you felt like you were into something too much, you would cut it off. There was this really big fear of being intimate or connecting to people due to something that must have happened with you as a child, that you lost somebody. So in this lifetime, that was like your way of protecting yourself, which makes perfect sense, right? You were extremely sympathetic and lovable, but you wouldn't let people in, right? What we see here is being guided by the energy of what we're seeing here is, I don't know how to say that in English, but it is a massive bird. It is, what is it? It's like a turkey, but it's big. And the energy is, if I remember the name, but that was the spirit animal, right? We also see a lot of change, a lot of rebirth, a lot of loss, a lot of chaos, but we're also seeing that Kundalini energy of the spine. So every 7 years, something big would happen that would take you to rebirth and transform yourself, right? So there was a lot of energy in the spine here. Some movement was very necessary, and just not putting up with anything. And I think it all comes beautiful, because now we see why you kind of just didn't settle for things, right? So basically, I'm still thinking about the name of that bird. So let's move on to that next card. So the next card is one of my favorites, and this is known as the Elizabethan Dancer. This took place in England around 1558 to 1603. And here your ruling planet was beautiful Venus, right? So here you were very articulate and artistic with a warm, congenial personality. There was this love of communicating thoughts through writing, speaking, music, or lecturing, right? You needed to be with many people at the same time, but you had this amazing clarity of thought with keen intelligence, but you were also highly romantic. So we're seeing the lifetime here of a bohemian person, someone who loved love, someone who believed that there was a soulmate for every part of our journey, that we weren't meant to just be with one person. We could just follow what our hearts wanted to do. So definitely this is definitely the meaning of that energy of a free spirit, right? So let's look a little bit deeper. We see the energy focus here was releasing, right? So what we see here is that there is a lot of working with goddess, right? And gods and the lower part of the world, which means like your shadow. So this is the lifetime of a shadow, right? So what we see, it's almost like you always sought to keep relationships stable, right? And you made a lot of sacrifices for the sake of an easy life, you know, but at the same time, you like to stir things up, right? So you were almost like seeking this amazing energy, but a lot of times it would come back to you, right? Almost like you would give it all in relationships, but then it would just not be returned. So we do see a lot of heartbreak here, but this heartbreak actually made you into super courageous. You were somebody who vibrated with love. So it didn't matter what anybody, would do. Eventually you would always see the lesson and move on, which I think it's actually a beautiful thing. This was a lifetime of a lot of traveling. So you didn't just stay in one place. You would travel to many different places. Yes, there was a lot of lovers. Yes, there was a lot of adventure, but I'm just getting the sense that in this lifetime you were extremely happy. You felt extremely complete, right? So now that we're done, right? So to come back to the moment, I'm going to pull out a card for the moment, right? So this could be our card of the moment just to see what's up. And our card for the moment is kinship, right? So right now it's all about trusting your energy and your wisdom, right? And working with connecting with people with likewise energy, as well as sharing your beautiful gifts and just finding support with people. So as you can see, we see a lot of lifetimes in a lot of sacred places, but what caught my attention is all of your gifts. So we see a lot of mediumship. We see a lot of really reading energy, and that is called the energy of a clairsentience. I don't like to label these psychic abilities, but we all know they are, right? So in this lifetime, you probably do have a lot of calling to these places, specifically working with the occult, maybe with dreams, maybe with healing. So I'm gonna leave it there because I could talk to you all day. Okay, so I cannot wait to hear back from you. Your energy is fucking amazing. I just wanted to say that, and I hope that you have a beautiful week. Lots of love and light to you. I love you, and blessed be. Bye-bye.